Mohammed Atta was the person that I actually talked to, and asked him, where are you from, trying to make him feel a little bit more comfortable, and dumb me, and he said he was from Germany. And I looked at him and I thought, boy, you don't look like a German to me.
At the end of July, both Atta and al-Shehi took their solo flights, and in mid-August, they passed their pilot's test. Classes and other expenses were paid for through wire transfers to a joint bank account set up by Atta and al-Shehi. US investigators would later discover financial documents that showed between July and September of 2000, the men of the Hamburg cell received more than $100,000, money traced to al-Qaeda operatives overseas. That summer, a highly classified military intelligence unit called Able Danger reportedly alerted the Pentagon to Atta and al-Shehi's presence in the US. Using data mining techniques, the unit identified the men as potential members of an al-Qaeda terror cell. But Pentagon officials decided not to inform the FBI because the men were holding valid US entry visas. In December, Atta and al-Shehi used their pilot's licenses to gain access to a highly sophisticated flight simulator near Miami. The sessions gave the men specialized training to operate a large commercial aircraft.
These were individuals that were focused on doing this thing, had been planning this thing for a long time to come, and all they were making sure was that they would not fail.
Meanwhile, Ziad Jarrah was taking flying lessons at the Florida Flight Training Center, also in Venice. Jarrah's easygoing nature helped him mix better than either Atta or al-Shehi.
Ziad had a good sense of humor and mixed very well with the other students. At the time, there was no other Muslim students. And really the only thing that reminded one of Ziad Jarrah being a Muslim was his name.
For a while, Jarrah stayed with a fellow student pilot, often making his roommate breakfast before leaving for his lesson.
Initially, Ziad was a little slow. He graduated in a normal time. His grades were above average. His flying skill, I would say, was above average.
By August, Jarrah, like his co-conspirators, had earned a single-engine private pilot certificate. Phase 1 of the plane's operation was now complete. Their plans proceeded until a mistake by Atta almost exposed them all. By late 2000, 3 members of the Hamburg cell, Mohammed Atta, Marwan al-Shehi, and Ziad Jarrah, had earned their pilot licenses at flight schools in Venice, Florida. Back in Hamburg, the 4th member of the cell, Ramzi bin al-Shiba, who'd failed to get a visa to the United States, continued to play a vital role in the so-called planes operation. According to bin al-Shiba's interrogation, Atta traveled to Germany in early 2001 to meet up with him. Atta informed his old friend that the flight training was complete. The operation now entered its final phase.
What they had left to do was figure out how to take over the planes, which flights to target, and then to go about finalizing the details of it.
Bin al-Shib then traveled to Afghanistan to personally deliver the news to al-Qaeda leaders. When Atta tried to re-enter the United States at Miami airport, he was detained for traveling on an expired visa. This error by the leader of the Hamburg cell could have ruined the entire operation. In an attempt to salvage his mission, Atta told officials about his flight training, explaining that he hoped to one day become a pilot. Eventually, he managed to persuade them to allow him back into the country. Throughout the summer of 2001, the men hammered out the details of their plan. They studied flight patterns and schedules, focusing on cross-country flights that would be loaded with fuel. They also discovered that small knives would not be confiscated by airport security. Each operative took numerous cross-country surveillance flights, flying on the same type of plane he would pilot on their mission: Boeing 767s and 757s. The men traveled in first class, sitting in seats that gave them a clear view of the cockpit. Atta concluded the best time to storm the cockpit would be about 10 to 15 minutes after takeoff, when the cockpit doors opened for the first time. And that 4 or 5 men spaced throughout the cabin would be enough to seize control of each plane. Additional men sent by bin Laden would carry out the job of storming the cockpit. These so-called muscle hijackers would then subdue the crew and passengers, while each Hamburg cell pilot flew the plane into his target. Atta and bin al-Shibh then began to coordinate the arrival of the muscle hijackers. In telephone calls and emails, these men are referred to as wedding guests, and the day of the attack, the wedding. As the plot progressed, Ziad Jarrah stayed in almost constant contact with his girlfriend, ISIL. In correspondence seized by German intelligence, it's clear ISIL knew Jarrah was hiding something. "Where are you?" she wrote. "I can't sleep at night anymore because I'm worried about you. Please just call me, please, and let me know that you're okay." Yet Jarrah never revealed his plans. In an email to ISIL, he wrote, "I arrived in good shape. I'm sorry I haven't gotten in touch for so long. I received your letter and thought it was really sweet. I love you, ISIL, and don't worry." In July 2001, Atta flew to Spain for a final meeting with Ramzi bin al-Shibh. It was the last time the men would see one another. They reviewed Osama bin Laden's list of approved targets, and to avoid detection, they spoke in code. They pretended to be students discussing fields of study. Arts referred to the Pentagon, law, the US Capitol building, politics, the White House, and architecture, the World Trade Center. The Twin Towers were important targets to bin Laden, symbolizing not only America's economic might, but because of New York's large Jewish population, Jewish America. Atta agreed to all the targets except one. He insisted that the White House was too difficult to reach. Ultimately, that target was struck from the list. At their meeting, Atta expressed his concern that Ziad Jarrah might be having second thoughts about the operation.
Atta was the perfect soldier, and he wanted everybody to be perfect. He was a perfectionist, and he wanted everybody to be a perfectionist, everybody who was under his command.
On his trip to Spain, Atta also bought a pocket knife, which authorities believe he took on his mission.